As promised, I'm back this afternoon. This is kind of the format I'm going to work with right now. In the morning, I told some stories about Alzheimer's and brain issues, and I promised to come back and break down some of the science about it. Now, before I get started, because get asked all the time, if you're diving into the replay of this later, understand I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a real world person who struggled with these things. And I rely on the science from the doctors who are dealing with this to bring you guys answers. So we're going to dive in to how insulin resistance is related to dementia and brain disorders to give you some better answers so you can understand what's happening, because this is no longer an old person disorder, and neither is brain fog and migraine headaches and all that. So let's dive in and stop and ask questions along the way if you have them. I'll give you time for questions at the end, but I really want to get some of this information out to you, hopefully in a way that makes sense to you so that you can start to understand how to take care of your own health. So look, did you know that just 20 years ago, medical books claimed that our brain didn't even respond to insulin? Just 20 years ago. And to me, that's crazy. But now, with all the research since then, with all this focus on insulin resistance, we know that insulin plays a huge role in how our brain works. And when things go wrong, it can seriously threaten your brain health. So if you know somebody who's struggling with even brain fog and headaches and all of that, share this out, because they might need to hear this to understand how to really start to feel better. So here's how it works. Every single cell in your body, including your brain cells, have insulin receptors. Every single cell. It's not just located in one place in the body. It's not just one issue. Every single cell has brain receptors, including your brain cells. So think of insulin receptors as these tiny little locks that insulin, a key hormone, is the key for, and it can open up those cells and allow energy in. When insulin unlocks the cells, it helps your brain take up energy in the form of glucose, which is from the food we eat. And this glucose keeps our brain cells alive and thriving, and even helps regulate your appetite. For example, after you eat, your insulin levels rise as you have a rise in glucose, and that signals your brain to curb your hunger. Okay, we all with me? Good. Welcome in, everybody. I see all you hopping in. Thank you, thank you. So insulin is also tied to learning and memory. Now, there was a fascinating study done, admittedly on rats. What they did, though, was they showed that those rats with diabetes who couldn't produce insulin had trouble learning a maze. But when those same rats were given insulin, their memory and learning improved. What they were really trying to do is mimic insulin resistance in rats by taking the ability to have insulin away. Type 1 diabetics struggle with this, right? So this shows how essential insulin function is for normal brain function. Remember, the rats who were not getting insulin could not learn a maze and got confused and stumbled, unlike the rats who had normal levels of insulin. Insulin's a very important hormone, not just for the body, but for your brain also. So insulin is also tied to learning and memory, not just curbing your hunger. Remember that. So the real trouble begins when insulin stops working like it should. When the brain becomes insulin resistant, now it can't take up that energy. And this happens alongside insulin resistance in the rest of the body. Where they used to think it didn't affect the brain, they now know that at the same rate the body becomes insulin resistant, the brain becomes insulin resistant too. Thanks, Michael. Hang out and ask questions and make comments. You guys, if any of this resonates with you, tap on the heart. Give me some love so that other people can see this information too, okay? So I forgot where I'm at now. So over time, insulin can actually change the structure of your brain. Insulin resistance, not getting energy into the brain, actually can change the structure of it. So research shows that insulin resistant brain ages faster. So I want you to think about this. If you have insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, either type of diabetes, then understand that for every 10 years you have insulin resistance, your brain ages to be 2 years older than a person of the same age with no insulin resistance. It really starts to damage your brain function, insulin resistance. So it's not something that we're like, oh, I don't have diabetes, I don't struggle with weight. If you have insulin resistance, you're putting your brain at risk. And I want everybody to understand that so that you don't end up with problems later on like I did. Okay. So, this the other platforms are wild, guys. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Some of the comments I get are kind of wild, and that's okay, but it distracts me. So, this insulin resistance problem in your brain leads to big problems. We might overeat because the brain isn't picking up the right signals. Remember, insulin delivers energy to the brain. The brain says, oh, we have energy, shuts down hunger. It doesn't perceive that it needs more energy. How many of you guys understand that hunger is not just driven from your gut, it's driven from your brain? And when your brain feels tired and without energy, then it's saying, hey, feed me, I need energy. So now you're hungry. So it's not necessarily that your gut's empty, it's that your brain says, I got to have something to function on and I don't have anything. With insulin resistance, it's impairing the ability to get that energy into the brain. So, in fact, some researchers have started calling type 3 Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because dementia and Alzheimer's disease are very closely linked to insulin resistance. Where they used to think it didn't relate, now they know. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, affecting millions of people worldwide. And it's really eye-opening how closely it's tied to insulin resistance. Okay. That's why they're now calling it not just Alzheimer's. They're not going, I don't know where this is coming from. They're very specifically calling it type 3 diabetes. And I'm going to explain why. So we've heard for a long time, or how many of you guys put a 1 in the chat for me if you've heard that type or Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, that they've been calling it that? Because I'm going to explain why. And Jimbo, I feel bad for you, bud. He says he has no brain. Yeah, we all have a brain and it does make a difference. So, okay. Alzheimer's. In Alzheimer's, the brain gets clogged up with sticky plaques. They're called plaques in the brain, are called that. They're amyloid beta peptides, or AB plaques. So normally the brain has ways to clean up these plaques. And one of the key helpers is a lipoprotein called ApoE. But when that lipoprotein is malfunctioning, we have a problem cleaning up those plaques in the brain. But even more importantly, about 15% of people have a version of ApoE called ApoE4, and that makes it so that those people, regardless of insulin resistance, don't clean up the plaques as well. So what I am telling you is, whether you're a person without, whether you're the 85% of people that do not have this ApoE4, or whether you're the ApoE4 type, you need to address your insulin, especially if you're the ApoE4 type, because now you're already predisposed to have these plaques in your brain, and insulin resistance is impeding that more. So now it's even more important to deal with insulin resistance. And the people with ApoE4 are 10 to 30 times greater at risk of developing Alzheimer's by their mid-70s, if not sooner. So again, combine that risk of ApoE4 with insulin resistance, and you've got a perfect storm for Alzheimer's disease. But depending on the level of insulin resistance, even in a normal functioning brain of just with regular ApoE, you're starting to put yourself at a much greater risk for Alzheimer's. So what all of that really is talking about is your brain's ability to utilize energy. So whether it's the ApoE4 type or whether it's just high amounts of insulin, you're impeding your brain's ability to utilize energy, and that starts to cause a lot of problems. So over time, this can lead to memory problems, mood changes, and a decline in overall brain function. It's okay, Jimbo. I get it. I have a quirky sense of humor sometimes too. So you better, yeah, buddy, listen up, Jimbo. Don't make me get out my Nana stick. All right? Great. Okay. I do have a sense of humor. Doesn't always show up, but I do have one. Okay, so the good news for all of you, prediabetes, diabetes, insulin resistant, don't know if you're insulin resistant, but have the symptoms. The good news is insulin resistance is something that we can work to reverse or prevent through lifestyle changes. If you understand that the core of most insulin resistance is going to be A, food, too much glucose, and then B, cortisol, too much stress. So we can start to make changes in our lifestyle to affect our insulin resistance pretty simply. It's much easier than people will tell you. You don't have to go carnivore or keto and do all these crazy things. And we're going to get to that at the very end of this. So it could be things like improving your diet, cutting out those bagged boxed barcoded foods, the excess sugars, the seed oils, the seed oils, the seed oils, the seed oils are causing a lot of damage, and they're causing some of this problem too. But getting in regular exercise. And you guys, when I talk about exercise, it's not just like I got to get out to the gym and I got to pump iron really hard, or I got to go run 5 miles. No, get up and walk, move your body. We're all sitting so much more than we ever used to. We just need to utilize what we have, and that's going to help us start to be more insulin sensitive. Now, key here, your leg muscles, the large muscles below the waist, legs, glutes, that will help you become more insulin sensitive quicker than like your arms and your chest muscles. So now it's really important to do those leg workouts, right? Squats, lunges, deadlifts, walking, running, those are all stair climbing. It doesn't have to be intense though. Just make sure you're getting in about 30 minutes of active movement throughout the day. Sidebar, okay? So, and then managing stress. I'm going to have another little sidebar here because one of the things we don't understand, and I've heard neuroscientists talking about recently, is this blue light. Oftentimes you'll see me wearing blue light blocking glasses. We're all in front of TVs, computers, phones. The blue light actually changes the way your brain functions as well and increases cortisol, which increases insulin resistance. So put the phone down. You guys, I started this practice of when I go out with my family members, my phone stays in my purse. It's not out when we're at dinner. It's like, not only is it rude to them, I just don't need that extra exposure to all the crazy in the world or the blue lights. So think about that. Think about ways you can start to get your stress levels down more naturally. And Jimbo says he has a Fitbit, helps you being active. And I think that's great. So like I have that activity function on my cell phone, my Apple, and that works. I also have, which I need to charge, I have a little Fit Watch too that I carry, can help track my steps, help with how active I am throughout the day. And then I just try to make sure I'm active, especially first thing when you get up in the morning. I'm going to give you a channel to follow real quick. It's one that I love. It's the Tai Chi Warrior. I see him a lot on YouTube. So if you feel like I can't get to the gym and I don't have special equipment, all of his movements are simple movements that you can work up to doing 100 times a day without weights, without anything, but it gets your whole body working, and that can help with your insulin sensitivity and your brain and your mood. So find the easy ways. You guys, you don't need to make things harder. All right, our life is already difficult enough. We don't need excess difficulty in our lives. Okay. So, something fascinating about how insulin resistance impacts the brain. It's not just those plaques we were talking about and tangles that can happen. I didn't really talk about the neurofibrillary tangles, but what insulin does with neurofibrillary tangles, you have these nerve pathways, which we're going to dive into in a minute. They start to get impeded, and it actually fires out the sides of your neural pathways, and it creates these tangles that start to block messages in the brain. So that's tangles. Should a 19-year-old walk Jimbo? I don't have that answer for you. That's going to be dependent on, how sedentary you are throughout the rest of the day, a number of things. You should be able to type that into a simple Google search or a Fit app and figure that out. But that's not my specialty. Dude, I have a hard time just keeping myself in check. Okay. All right. So look, beyond the plaques and tangles, what's happening in your brain with Alzheimer's, with cognitive decline, dementia, is that insulin resistance is actually disrupting the way our brain's nerve cells, or those neurons I was talking about, communicate with each other. So I want you to think of your brain as a massive highway system where billions of cars or nerve signals need to travel efficiently from one point to another. Freeway system, right? Insulin's like a traffic controller, ensuring that the signals get where they need to go. Those that are on the freeway just keep passing all the exits on the freeway till it gets to the exit it needs, and then they'll get off at the exit and take the other path they need. But with insulin resistance, that traffic controller starts to disrupt how and when we get off that freeway, right? So those pathways are disrupted, and some of the cars get confused and maybe take an exit too early. So when your brain is insulin resistant, those signals start getting misdirected. So think of it like a GPS that glitches. So you think that you're supposed to get off at this exit, and it's really not the exit you're supposed to get off, but your GPS is telling you you're there. Now you're struggling to try and get back on that freeway and figure out. Like Portland, you guys, I'm going to say Portland, I live there, is one of the worst cities I've been in. Dude, most cities have an exit and then you can get back onto the freeway fairly easily. Portland, I remember getting off on some exits and it could take me 20 minutes to find a way back onto the freeway. That's what's happening in your brain. Okay. So this miscommunication will mess with the way your neurons talk to each other, which causes major issues with memory, focus, and even mood. And instead of clear, direct signals, the communication starts to get all jumbled up, and parts of the brain aren't getting the messages they need. So, even more so, insulin is playing a role in maintaining the health of something called a myelin sheath, a protective layer around our nerves. So, I want you to think of myelin as the insulation on electrical wires that keeps the signal strong and on track. When insulin resistance kicks in, this protective layer gets broken and it can weaken. So it allows these signals to leak through that sheath or lose strength. So now, even if you have this pathway clear, these breakages in that sheath start making it more difficult for the right messages to get through in the right time. Okay. So, this is one of the reasons why we experience brain fog, where it feels like your thoughts are cloudy and slow, why you struggle to concentrate, why you're trying to come up with something and you can't think of it. And then, like a half an hour later, there's that thought. That myelin sheath may have been damaged because of insulin resistance, slowing down how quickly that information can pass through. Okay. But it doesn't stop there. These disruptions in nerve communication also mess with the brain's emotional centers. So we're not just talking Alzheimer's, we're not just talking brain fog. We're going to talk about things like depression, anxiety, other neurological disorders, autism, mood regulation disorders, bipolar. I'm not going to tell you that insulin is causing all of those, but it can certainly exacerbate a number of them or make it worse. So, the disruptions in your nerve communication also mess with those emotional centers. And that's why insulin resistance has been linked to anxiety, depression, and even more of those severe disorders that nobody's talking about. I'm here to let you know there's a possibility that it could be an insulin disruption making those things worse. There's a genetic component with some of them, but insulin resistance can absolutely make it worse. So, when your brain can't function on or fire on all cylinders, it's not just your thinking that suffers, it's your mood, your energy levels, and your overall sense of well-being. Now, Jimbo, thank you. I am not way smarter than your biology teacher. I just do a lot of research and lean on the people who do know, and then I try to condense it so that everybody else can get the information too. But thank you for that. So, when we look at these mood disorders, how many of you guys feel like, or when I was married, I had a fairly narcissistic husband, and he was gaslighting all the time. I was tired, I was battling depression, I had a number of things going on, and he always looked at me and blamed me like I was defunct. In fact, in our divorce, he said that my brain was broken, which caused us to have to go through cognitive testing and emotional testing and all of this. And to his chagrin, I tested out at genius level, and he did not. But the function of my brain was being changed even back then before we knew anything about insulin resistance, and it changed how I functioned. But I took it on myself as if I was broken, especially with those messages like I could do better. How many of you guys have heard, like, if you're depressed, if you're having anxiety, just change your thoughts, right? You can change it, just change your thoughts. Well, not necessarily. So yeah, there is changing your thoughts and focusing on better things. I agree with those. But if you have an insulin problem in your brain that's impeding the way your dopamine and your serotonin and all of the things in your brain that you need to regulate emotion and feel good are dysfunctioning, how do you think that any changing of your thoughts is going to help you? You've got to understand what the root cause is. And yeah, change your thoughts. Focus on more positive things, but also take care of the biology that's making your brain break down. And that happens to lead back to insulin resistance and high amounts of sugar in our systems, okay? So here's where it's going to get really interesting. Insulin helps regulate certain neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are brain chemicals like the ones I mentioned, serotonin and dopamine, and they influence how we feel and how we respond to stimuli that creates emotion in our body. Without proper insulin function, the chemicals get out of balance and they lead us to emotional ups and downs. Maybe you lose your temper too quickly. Maybe you cry really easily. Maybe you just feel depressed all the time and you have an inability to feel joy. Those could be chemical imbalances inside your body driven by our imperfect food environment, not that you're a bad person or you're defunct. So I want everybody to get rid of that. If you struggle with those things, I also don't want you to use it just as an excuse to go on with bad behavior, but understand that you're struggling with something that just trying to think it away isn't going to help. We need to give you nutritional support so that your brain can actually process and utilize those neurotransmitters and feel good and feel appropriate emotion. So, now, the answer, you guys, I'm going to tell you this. What changed for me? Because I was showing signs of Alzheimer's. I had severe brain fog. I had vertigo. I had a lot of brain function going wrong with me at the ages of like 56, 57 years old. I stumbled on the protocol that I talk about, and I'm going to explain why it helps. Okay. We're going to stay sciencey right now because I'm going to explain it. So, the protocol is just food products that are putting back in the nutrition that's been taken away, that's causing the insulin resistance in the first place. So it's real food products, changing your diet just a little bit by getting rid of all the bag toxic food that we eat, or at least narrowing down on those, and a little bit of intermittent fasting. I'm going to get into ketones and why ketones are so important for the brain and what the brain likes for fuel. But I want to stop for a second, and I'm going to talk about the tea that I drink. I drank up my tea before I sat down. I didn't have time to make another one, but it's in a package like this. It's great. You'll see me drinking it all day. In fact, I'm not really addicted to the tea, but I know how different I feel um, when I'm drinking the tea. So hang on. And Jimbo, this live will be saved on my YouTube channel right where you're at. Just come back later and skip forward and listen to the rest of it. And I hope then and there will be links. There should be links on my YouTube so you can get a hold of me and further the conversation if you'd like to, because I love helping people out. All right. So this tea isn't just, it's a yerba mate tea, but it's highly concentrated and highly purified. So it's upgraded massively. It has 375 times the components of normal teas in some areas that are specific to your brain health. Okay. So It's that highly concentrated version that's been purified to remove unwanted compounds like pesticides, microplastics, molds, PAHs. So now those things that you're getting in coffees, teas, even in your Red Bulls, those are stripped out of this. So now it's very clean and it has other components in it that they call adaptogens that help you have an energy boost without the energy crash. But because it's real nutrients and it helps you with insulin sensitivity. So the difference again between insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance, too much insulin, your cells are resisting the cues from insulin. That's insulin resistance, and the body needs insulin. Insulin sensitivity means that those pathways that were blocking the energy uptake that insulin was trying to bring are now starting to open up and able to get in that energy and nutrients that we so desperately need, not just in our brain, but throughout the rest of our body. So here's how the tea ties to improving brain health and insulin resistance. Number one, it boosts your GLP-1 or glucagon like peptide formation. And that hormone, peptide hormone, is one of Unimate's standout features. It has the ability to increase that hormone that you hear about all over the place right now by up to 70%. No other yerba mate tea on the market has science backing to make those claims at all. At all. We all know that they can increase GLP-1, but not by 70%. This is the only tea that can do that. Now, if that hormone, the GLP-1, plays a major role in stabilizing your blood sugar and improving insulin sensitivity. And by boosting that GLP-1 up to 70%, Unimate helps your body use insulin more efficiently. So it's not just about producing more insulin, it's using what you have more efficiently. And this means the brain gets a more stable supply of glucose for energy, which can reduce brain fog and increase mental clarity. Okay. So the tea is doing all of that naturally without any chemicals being added to your body that are, you know what I'm talking about. So now it also helps support those neurotransmitters that are starting to break down, and that helps you with mood and focus. Okay. Unimate, this tea, is packed with natural compounds like chlorogenic acids, polyphenols, vitamins and minerals, which have been shown to enhance the production of dopamine. Remember the neurotransmitter? This is the feel good neurotransmitter. I have ADHD, trauma response ADHD. I have problems with dopamine, so I have fixation problems, right? The tea helps normalize all of that. So I experience less of the negative effects of my ADHD because now my brain is able to produce and utilize I'm sorry, dopamine isn't produced in the brain, but utilize dopamine more effectively than I ever have been. So memory is better, mood is better. I don't have the outbursts of anger when things go wrong like I used to. But dopamine not only lifts your mood, but it sharpens your focus and your motivation. What people who don't have ADHD don't realize is, and I was trying to explain this to my kids the other day, it's not that I don't have information, it's that oftentimes there's a lack of motivation to utilize the information. So it gets frustrating for me and them. Because of the increased uptake of dopamine by this simple drink, I have less of those motivation problems. I have less of that regulatory problem of I have knowledge, go put it to use that I used to have. So that dopamine increase intake is counteracting the emotional and cognitive issues that often come also with insulin resistance. But it also, the tea helps with chronic stress. So even though it has some caffeine in it, about the same as a cup of coffee, it has those adaptogens that are helping mediate those effects of caffeine. And it helps you deal with stress better. It helps you with cortisol regulation now too. So chronic stress worsens insulin resistance and can cause brain function harm. And the bioactive compounds in this tea help reduce cortisol levels, again, your body's main stress hormone, and lower cortisol levels mean less inflammation in the brain and better communication between your neurons. And that's critical for symptoms like anxiety, depression, and the sluggishness that you feel when you have brain fog. I hope this is all making sense. This is all coming from one simple tea that I drink every day. I have two of them and I drink it throughout the day for all of these reasons. And it's not just me saying that. The people in my life within 4 days of starting to drink the tea noticed the changes in me so much so that they stopped me and asked me what I was doing. That's crazy. It was crazy to me then, it's crazy to me now, okay? But the tea is also helping you with energy and mental clarity. So, yerba mate itself naturally contains that caffeine, but it also contains one of these, adaptogens is called theobromine. Now, theobromine is a compound that you find in high quality chocolate. So if you're "Hey, Jenny," so if you're having chocolate and you get that feel good feeling, that's the compound in chocolate that's making you feel good is theobromine. Now, in our tea, there's 3 times the theobromine as you'll find in the highest quality dark chocolate. You're not getting all the calories, you're not getting all the sugar, but you're getting 3 times that feel good sensation that you get when you eat dark chocolate from theobromine. So that steady energy that you get with the mediation of the theobromine helps you fuel your brain, ensuring it can perform tasks throughout the day at its best throughout the day, not just glimpses, not just moments, but throughout the day. So you'll feel more alert, focused, and ready to tackle the mental tasks that you need to tackle. Now, when I'm in seminars with ADHD, I'll pass out. Like if I have to sit still and listen to somebody, I'm gone. So what I do is I just drink extra of the tea. You'll see me walk in with water bottles with a stack of these teas. I'll just keep drinking them. It helps me stay focused and not get that I'm bored and pass out feeling when I'm in lectures or needing to learn stuff over long periods of time. It really does work for me that way. Now, another thing that the tea does, because we're talking about brain, is that it has antioxidants in it, and it has a high amount of antioxidants in it. They act as a shield for your brain cells, and that protects them from oxidative stress and inflammation, two major drivers of neurodegeneration or brain degeneration. Yeah, it's a great pre-workout drink too, Jenny. And we'll talk about that. I wasn't going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. So, it helps with the major drivers of neurodegeneration and insulin resistance is oxidative stress and inflammation. This helps that from occurring so heavily in your body. By reducing that kind of damage, oxidative stress and inflammation, the tea helps preserve healthy and neural pathways and long-term brain function. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to what Jenny said. It's a great pre-workout. So it always you guys truly it breaks my heart even when I know people who are doing those pre-workouts and stuff and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever," and they don't want to hear it because I know how much that's damaging their bodies. This gives you that energy without the crashes, without the damage. Here's the other thing. I was an athlete before my body deteriorated. That was before I found the system. And I was a world level athlete, but I lifted in a forum that I had to get drug tested a lot. I had friends who were taking supplements that they thought were clear, and there was something in that hidden in that supplement that popped them on a drug test, and they lost their titles, they lost their medals, they lost the ability to compete in that organization. This is listed with the Cologne list, which is worldwide. It's listed with safe for sport, so it's not going to pop anybody on a drug test. Yet it gives you that extra energy. And what Jenny's talking about is it's been scientifically proven to increase endurance, stamina, energy, performance in an athlete up to 10 to 15% more. So Here's the thing. In my 50s, I was able to bench press in competition. I could bench press more in the gym, but in competition with the strict rules in competition, after doing squats, I was able to bench press 275 pounds. I had always wanted to do a 300-pound raw bench press, meaning no excess equipment, which is how I lifted. That 10%, when I look back, had I had this system and been able to use it as an athlete, that you add 10% to my bench press, now I'm over 300-pound bench press as a 50-year-old. Would that have made a difference? Absolutely. I wish I would have had it then. So that's a caveat. That's on that side. But let's get back to the brain health and all of the anxiety, depression, all the stuff. So it's not about just feeling great in the moment. It's not about just that brain boost in the moment that you're drinking it. It's a tool for long-term brain and metabolic health. And by improving insulin sensitivity, enhancing neurotransmitter production, and protecting your neurons, it helps address the root causes of brain fog, mood swings, and even the risk of dementia and serious conditions like Alzheimer's. So now we're going to talk about ketones versus carbs, okay? Because we talked about carbs a little bit and how the brain's not able to use them. So your brain actually has two sources, your whole body has two sources of energy, carbohydrates and fats. When we talk ketones, we're talking about getting fats as energy, right? It's like getting high octane energy in your system. So the difference between carbohydrates and fats, I'm going to give you guys some statistics, and I wrote them down because there's no way I can remember all of this. I'm smart, but dude. So let's talk about it. Your brain typically relies on glucose, which is carbs, bagged, boxed, barcoded, fruits and vegetables, some from proteins. That's what your brain typically works on. For most of us, that's all it's really working on because we're so overfed all the time. When insulin resistance, though, because we're so overfed and eating these food, disrupts that glucose intake, the brain is struggling to get the fuel it needs. And this is where ketones are needed. When your body is struggling to use glucose, we need to retrain it to be able to use ketones. And that only happens when your body burns fat for fuel. And they step in then as a superior alternative. Now, the interesting thing is, as long as insulin is high in your body, you cannot burn fat for fuel. So early on in this journey, I was able to talk to Dr. Bickman, one of the top metabolic scientists in the world, and ask him some very direct questions. One of the questions I had was, because I was learning at that point, right? I said, hey, doc, I do these fasts, I do all this stuff. So what I've noticed is A, B, C, and D. But my thought is that if my ketones are staying up, my insulin level is down. If my ketones start to drop, that means my insulin level is going up. And he said, absolutely. On a very simple measure, that's what's happening. So when you're doing anything where your ketones are really low, that means you're surviving on that glucose for fuel. We need to stop eating so much. We need to take a break from food. Ketones are that cue that we don't have glucose available in the system anymore and that we're starting to work toward a fat burning stage. Also means insulin is coming down. And insulin has to be down in order to burn fat for fuel. Insulin is what they call an anabolic hormone. It wants things to grow. So because insulin, I call it a bully in the system, is so predominant in the system, when it's present and it's like, I'm making things grow, I'm trying to get energy out to the body, it's not going to let you break down fat and take away all of its work. And guess what? Fat is where the excess energy goes when insulin can't get it in the other cells of the body. So insulin is out. It's trying to get this sugar out to the cells of the body. The cells of the body don't want to use it. Now it's stuffing it in your fat cells because that's the only place it can put it. Okay. Now, why ketones? Well, ketones are like premium fuel for the brain. They provide about 25% more energy per molecule than glucose does. Hey, Blue, I don't think I've ever seen you on one of my lives. Woohoo! All right. So they provide 25% more energy per molecule compared to glucose, making ketones an incredibly efficient source for energy. And this increased efficiency helps maintain mental clarity even when glucose metabolism is impaired by insulin resistance. Okay. Even if you have insulin resistance and we can get you into a state where you have ketones, as you're healing that insulin resistance, your brain is going to start functioning better just by being able to use those ketones. Okay. So they're also a cleaner energy. So burning glucose for energy creates a lot of oxidative stress, basically wear and tear on your cells. In contrast, when you're burning ketones, they produce 30 to 40% fewer of those free radicals, causing the oxidative stress, meaning they're a much cleaner source that protects your brain from inflammation and long term damage. Okay, your brain can function on either one, but understand that although your brain currently is using glucose, you'll have better function, better longevity of your brain cells when you allow it to use ketones, just a much cleaner source. Does that mean you need to have ketones all the time? No. But we're not using them. Most of us are not using them at all, and that's a problem. Okay? So our brain actually prefers ketones. Research shows that during periods of insulin resistance, the brain will happily, in a fasted state, switch to ketones as its primary source for energy. In fact, studies have shown that ketones can supply up to 70% of the brain's energy needs during times of low glucose availability, which means fasting, right? So, fasting is getting insulin down, fasting is increasing ketones, fasting is increasing the ability to use this cleaner source for fuel, not just for your body, but for your brain. So, I have a problem when people say, I get hangry, I get crabby or brain fog when I'm fasting. No, you don't. No, you don't. Your brain actually functions more cleanly when you're fasting. Your mental clarity goes up. And let's talk about why. When we look at history of the human body and we think about in times of fasting when we needed hunter gatherers, when we needed to find a food source, do you think that our biology would serve us by allowing us to be brain fog and sleepy and tired and sluggish? No, right then is when we needed to be powerfully awake and super aware so that we could find that food source. Ketones are creating that in our brain. Most of us are not experiencing it in the way we're eating and being fed today. It's a problem. Okay. So, ketones also stabilize your energy levels, preventing the high crashes often associated relying solely on carbs. So, how many of you guys have eaten a high carb meal or that big holiday meal, which we all just had, and all of a sudden you realize, "Oh, I have this energy slump, I'm tired, I just want to go lay down on the couch and sleep." That's carbohydrates. But when you're fasted, you don't notice that. I trained fasted all the time because this action is not only happening in your brain, it's happening in your muscles. You don't need to have a high carb load before you go work out. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. So again, Unimate is helping because we're using it during the fasted state. When we drink Unimate during a fasted state, when we're trying to get insulin levels down, Unimate does not break that fast. It helps increase HGH production. It helps increase ketone production. All of that good stuff I just talked about starts to increase in a fasted state when using Unimate with it or the tea that I drink. Okay. So it's encouraging your body to tap into that stored fat for energy. And this helps produce your ketones, giving your brain access to clean, efficient fuel source. And as a result, you're not only supporting better metabolic health, but also feeding your brain the kind of energy that it thrives on. All right. So I'm just about done because I do have another meeting in 5 minutes. We'll try and wrap this up. So Understand that Unimate can help with your brain function in many ways, but it's also helping with that ketone production. It's helping with GLP-1 production. It has all these vitamins and minerals in it. By the way, it has every vitamin and mineral in it needed to sustain life. And in this tea, because it's highly concentrated and highly purified, you're getting doses of that we really need. Understand that our food is 40 to 70% less dense in nutrients than it used to be 50 years ago. And alongside that, when you're in insulin resistant state, you're naturally absorbing less nutrients anyway. The Unimate, or the tea that I drink, starts to help reverse that, allows energy absorption, allows nutrient absorption, starts to turn that clock so that we can switch the time back around to something that's more natural for our body. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about our pre-meal drink really quickly before I get off this brain talk, because I think it's important to understand that this also can help your brain function. I'm going to explain why. So there's a reason why these two are together, because they synergistically help with your metabolic function by doing all of these actions I've been talking about. So think about everything I talked about in the brain. Similar actions are happening throughout your body. Now, one of the interesting things that I had when I was able to go talk to Dr. Bickman, and I was playing around with fasting to see what it did to my body in the beginning, I noticed a significant spike in ketones um, during a fasting. So I fasted for several days, got my ketone levels really up in the beginning with insulin resistance. Your ketone levels are not going to come up right away. Okay, understand that. But so in this fast, I got my ketone levels up, and then I thought, I want to see what the fiber does. Because at the time, people were like, does the fiber break your fast? I didn't know, but I'm going to try it out on myself to help you guys out. My ketone levels almost doubled when I added the fiber to my fast. And this is what Dr. Bickman said why. These are prebiotics, the fibers, the 7 specific fibers in here, and the phytosterols will not actually help feed your probiotics. When your probiotics, the naturally good gut microbiome in your gut, feeds on these, what they produce is short chain fatty acids. When the body sees short chain fatty acids coming out, it naturally spurs more production of ketones. So when I said, well, then does that mean for our insulin purposes, right? For the insulin level purposes, my understanding is ketones go up, insulin is staying down. If I had taken this, drank this during a fasted state and my ketones went down, that would have told me that I was eliciting more insulin in my body, and it didn't. So we had a short conversation about it, and we agreed that this is not breaking the fast. It's actually helping you drive further into the ketone production we want in a fast to help with insulin resistance. So beyond that, this drink plays an essential role in processing, tackling insulin resistance at its root, in promoting an environment in your gut that supports that ketone production, like I just mentioned. So here's how that's happening. Balance contains this multi-fiber complex that includes those prebiotic fibers, and the fibers feed that healthy gut bacteria, right? They love to feed on that. They don't like sugar, by the way. Your probiotics don't like sugar. So when probiotics feed on these prebiotics, they produce those short chain fatty acids like butyrate. And they don't just nourish your gut. Those short chain fatty acids don't just nourish your gut. They actually signal to your liver to increase ketone production. That's where that's happening. And that gives your brain access to this more clean and efficient source of energy. Now, this pre-meal drink also slows the digestion of carbohydrates, and that reduces the post-meal blood sugar spike and insulin surges that go along with the blood sugar spike. And those insulin surges are what leads to insulin resistance over time. Insulin doesn't come down as quickly as sugar does. So if we keep that sugar spike lower, we keep the insulin spike lower, the body's not as angry at insulin and starts to take the cues from it much quicker. That pre-meal drink can reduce a blood sugar spike up to 40% on a high carbohydrate meal, and that's massive. I don't know of another product on the market that can make that claim, and that's science-backed. So We also want to understand that there is a gut brain connection. If your gut is inflamed, it's going to cause more inflammation in the brain and cause more of that neurodegenerative damage. Okay. So keeping your gut healthy is essential to keeping your brain healthy, right? So, um, all right, here it is. So I'm going to read this one. Notes that I made. Healthy gut is key to a healthy brain. Those short chain fatty acids that I talked about, produced from the fibers in this pre-meal drink, help reduce neuroinflammation. That helps protect neurons and even produce and boost the production of BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor, a protein that's critical for learning, memory, and overall brain resilience. So, this gut brain connection that we talk about, it's vital as disruptions in the gut are often linked to anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. There's a real axis between the gut and the brain. So we got to keep the gut healthy to keep the brain healthy. But the pre-meal drink is also reducing cravings, enhancing your body's ability to burn stored fat for energy, and keeping those blood sugar and insulin spikes lower, which is helping with your short chain fatty acids from the prebiotics. That allows you to shift into ketosis if you're interested in that, where your body can burn fat for fuel and create those ketones that your brain can feed off of. It's a superior energy source. Remember, we all need to be in ketosis at some point during the day. I'm not telling you that you've got to spend 24 hours in ketosis, but if you can hit ketosis for a couple of hours a day, your brain is going to love you for it. Your body's going to love you for it. Other organs are going to thrive on it as well. So it's also producing or promoting satiety. So when I drink this fiber, this pre-meal matrix, I get less hungry. I had one before my noon meal at 1 o'clock. I won't eat again until 6 or 7. I'll have another one then. I will talk another day about how the fiber works and some issues, some not issues, but some great things with the fiber later. But these fibers expand in your stomach, helping you feel fuller longer, and they can stay that way and affect you for hours later as it changes your gut microbiome. So that reduces the likelihood of overeating. By the way, when you're overrun with negative gut microbiome, that microbiome, that negative stuff like the yeasts, they thrive on sugar. So do you wonder why you're craving sugar and crappy stuff all the time? Because that negative gut microbiome wants to live and it's telling you eat more sugar because there's so much of us in there we need fed. When we can switch that around and get that balance back in the gut, you're not craving sugar as much either. Okay. And that's important. People don't realize that. But now by keeping your appetite in check, this pre-meal drink can prevent the cycle of overloading the brain with glucose, which, when we overload the brain with glucose, leads to fatigue, brain fog, and long-term damage. Want to take care of your brain? Take care of your insulin resistance, okay? If you guys are interested in the system, because the pieces work together, it's a synergistic system that actually really works, and it's worked for me and thousands of other people. Just check out the link in my bio. I will drop a link in the YouTube channel when I'm done with this, or you can find it on any of my channels. But check it out. I have just recently opened up appointment slots if you want to talk to me. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose, but I can listen to you and hear what's going on and help you understand if it could be related to insulin resistance and if this could actually have a chance of working for you. That's what we're talking about, and helping you understand why you might need to take a step like this to address your health. Okay. So now, before I hop off, because I'm late for that other meeting, understand that I do this as a business. I help other people do this as a business. Look, I talk about the science because that's my baby blanket, that's my comfort zone. But you know what? If you just want to tell stories and help people, it works that way too. If you're interested in helping other people and helping yourself at the same time, there's a link where you can book a consultation with me free. I never charge for these consultations, where we can learn about the business and decide if it's right for you too. Okay. So use either one of the links if you're just interested in the products to get healthier, if you're interested in the business to help your finances and build a more sustainable income. Use the link and let's talk. It's the best way to make sure you get a hold of me because I am running crazy most of the days. You guys, thank you for hanging out with me. I'm so happy to be back and talking about science again. Over the weekend, I'm not going to dive into science. I might talk a little bit about business, but on Monday, we'll start talking about all the implications of insulin resistance and the science behind it. In the meantime, you can always find the videos housed permanently when I go live on YouTube. And that's at Brilliant Health with Misha. And I don't remember if I think it's on my link tree as well. All of my social media channels, there should be links there. So just go click on them and you can find these videos housed there. The live videos don't house on TikTok, or I would love to just keep you here. All right, you guys, have a great weekend. Spend time with your family. Take care of your health. I'm going to dive in, go to some basketball games with my grandson, hang out with my family, and chill out and just really enjoy life. I want you guys to do that too. Give yourself and your brain and your body the ability to enjoy life. Okay? We'll see you later. Thanks. Bye, guys.